If you've got Hyrox coming up and you've got more to think about than just your training, what shoes you're going to wear, where you're going to put the patch in your Built for Athletes bag, you need to think about your race strategy as well. Although those other things are important too. You can do all the best training in the world, prepare as well as you want, but if your strategy on the day doesn't work, then your race is going to be up in smoke. Trust me, I know how that feels. So what I'm going to do today is take you through the points you need to consider when thinking about how you're going to approach your race, what to do, and maybe more importantly, what to not do. So the very first thing you need to consider about your race strategy is that the best strategy for me isn't going to be the best strategy for you or your mate or one of the elite 15s, because it's quite an individualized thing. And it can really heavily change based on whether you're doing singles or doubles, and it also can change based on what type of profile you are. Now what I mean by that is that most people come to Hyrox from one of two different areas. Maybe you've done more strength or gym-based training before, and then you don't really like the running, or you're not as good at the endurance side of things, or you're like me, but you come from the endurance side of things, and the stations might be where you lose more time. Leading me on to my first point, you need to know which one of these you are, and know where you're going to maybe gain time and where you're going to lose it, because that's going to basically affect how you think about everything else I say in this video. Now, you might think you're split down the middle. Be completely honest with yourself. Are you a better runner? Are you better at the stations? Nearly everyone should be able to say which one of those they are. Okay, bring me on to my next point, which is don't pace off your ego. Now, your target race time, your target running time, your target station times, whatever, should be based on your training and the data, or whatever data you have. It shouldn't necessarily be based on what you think you can do. Now, obviously, if you get halfway through the race and you feel amazing, push on, but you shouldn't start the race by going off your ego, what other people do, or what you think you'd like to do, because you need to be real with yourself. And this is coming from someone who has absolutely made that mistake. My first Hyrox, I came from the running background. I was pretty ill that day, but I thought I'd be fine. I sped off right at the front, and yeah, it really didn't go well. So in singles, you're going to absorb every single mistake you make. So don't make that one. If you're better at the stations, obviously be somewhat conservative towards the start of the race. If you're better at the run, don't just try and use it like I did and go flying off into the distance, because the first half of the race is the hardest. And if you pace off your ego from the start, that's really going to catch you out. Okay? If you're on doubles, a bit more wiggle room if you like. However, if one person overcooks it, the other person has got to just drag around and wait for it. So don't pace off your ego. Try and have your plan based on the data you've got and what you know you can do, and then take it from there once your race actually starts. This flows quite nicely onto the next point, which is know whether you're trying to limit your losses or gain time on each specific station or run. Now, what I mean by that is that if you're better at the stations, you need to just manage things a little bit on the run so you can get to the stations and actually make the time back. As opposed to if you're good at the running, you need to make sure you can use that and take good advantage of that, because obviously the race is mostly running. And you get to the stations and manage the heart rate. Now, you might do this by breaking up the set push a little bit more, so not doing a full length, doing a half length, taking a couple more breaks, meaning if you lose 10 seconds on a station, you might be able to gain 20 or 30 on the run. And that's what you've got to think about. On singles and doubles, if you're both the same, and obviously the same applies on your doubles. If it's doubles and you've got one who's a good station, one who's a good runner, it can work, but you just need to make sure you split accordingly. And what I mean by that is who finishes and starts stations, okay? If you've got a stronger runner by a fairish amount, you want them to finish the stations, so they're going to be a bit more compromised on the run, which might even the playing field a little bit. So things like that you need to think about. Am I on this particular station, am I really good? Do I struggle? Am I trying to limit my losses, manage things? Vice versa on the runs. What's my profile? How should I best apply it? Another thing you need to think about is when you're going to do a hard effort and push hard. Now, obviously, the whole event's hard, right? But there'll be some stations where you maybe go a little bit harder than others. Like, for example, the rower is a common one where people will maybe just go a little bit under because it's middle of the race, easy to manage the heart rate, that sort of thing. But you need to know where you're going to get the most out of pushing hard or less. For example, for me, sleds, because I'm a little bit smaller, it's fair to say, the sleds have caused a bit more of a problem for me in the past. So I know that whilst I need to put a lot of effort in there, I shouldn't redline it because they're what absolutely nuked me. So I need to therefore just manage it a little bit, take more breaks, go from there. You might be the opposite and you might be out on the burpees, which the burpees have always been my strength, they might not be for you. You might find that you need to therefore be really good at them and push really hard and gain some time. Equally, you might need to do the opposite and try and get through it and push really hard on the things you're better at, such as the farmer's carry. So know what stations are your targets. I usually suggest that manage it for the first half of the race. Once you're on the rower, you can sort of assess how you're feeling. You probably will know by then if you're in the bin, if you're 1 foot in the bin, or if you're not in the bin at all, okay? And then from there, you can push harder if you need to. If you're not sure, I'd go for that approach, but if you have done maybe a couple more races before, you can think about specific stations and maybe pushing earlier and then easing off and going hard again, or that sort of thing. All right, before we move on to my next point, I'm just going to interrupt the video because if you are finding what I'm saying so far useful, you might be interested in a little bit more advice for your Hyrox. And what I've done, I've essentially collated 30 ways or 30 areas that you can get better at Hyrox, and I'm going to deliver these to you via 1 email a day over the next 30 days, if you're interested, of course. Now, think of it as like a free mini Hyrox crash course. It covers things like training, nutrition, what setting to put your watch on, footwear, all of that sort of thing I cover in these emails. You can unsubscribe anytime, and it's completely free, no catch, nothing, okay? So if you are interested, just scan this QR code here. There's also going to be a link in the description, but let's just get back to the video, and I'm going to stop wasting any more of your time, or not wasting, if you want to join this. But yeah, back to the video. Okay, my next point is for those of you doing doubles. Doesn't apply to singles at all. When it comes to splitting your stations in doubles, this is what most people think of as a race strategy. How am I going to split it, okay? Trying to split it 50-50 down the middle isn't always the best option. Just because it's fair doesn't mean it's smart. Now, if you have one person who's so much better at something than someone else, like using me as an example, I'm doing pro doubles for the first time in Cardiff. My partner is exceptionally good at the sled pull. It is my worst station. Therefore, if we split it halfway, we're not going to quite be as fast. If you are going for as fast as you can, you need to think about it. Now, if we did split it in half, it'd probably be that he does the first half of the length of the sled pull and I do the second, simply because when the rope's longer and it's further away, it's harder to pull. Once it gets halfway, a little bit easier, okay? Because there's less slack to pull out. The power you apply to it will reach it earlier. That's my physics. I'm pretty sure that's right. But yeah, okay. Or equally, he might do an extra half length, extra length compared to me, or just switch on and off when we need it. Because we're doing it to do it, but you want to get a good time too. So if you are going for time, think about pros and cons of splitting it 50-50, maybe 60-40. Obviously, you probably don't want someone doing 100% of the station. If I had my way, I'd be doing the first wall ball and then my partner would do the other 99. But again, that's not really in the spirit of doing it together. If you are just doing it for fun, then obviously split it down the middle if you want. But if you really want to get the best time possible, just think about it. Okay, I've spent most of the video saying that maybe you should manage things until about halfway and see how good you feel and then maybe push on from there. Whilst this is a good strategy, make sure if you do decide to push on, you don't push on to the extent where the end of the race becomes a disaster. Because obviously, if you're bad pacing at the start, you might not always notice it at the start, you might notice it at the end, and you will really notice it at the end. Because obviously wall ball is one of the hardest stations for most people. It's the last thing you do. The couple before that, personally, I find a little bit easier. I think more people will find things like your farmer's carry less of a problem than say the wall balls, okay? So you can push through there, just make sure that you're leaving enough in the tank for a big effort on the wall balls because it's easy to bleed time on the wall balls. Every singles I've done, whilst the sled pull's probably been my worst one, I've always felt like I've leaked too much time on the wall balls because if you put that ball down, before you know it, 20 seconds have gone, put it down again 10 reps later, before you know it, 20 more seconds have gone. So make sure you leave space for the wall balls because your effort early is going to get really expensive late in the race. Okay, so there's some things that you need to take into consideration for your race strategy at Hyrox. It's not just about how you split the stations. We all know rough techniques to go for that. For example, a lot of people might do on doubles for ski, 250, one person, then the next, etc. Or you can do a minute or 30 seconds on the switch like that. When it comes to singles, you've got to do all of it. So that's why I've tried to make points which can apply to both races, and you just got to change it a little bit. Now, the very last thing I need to tell you is that above all else, you need to try and get your running consistent if you can, because running is easily the biggest part of the race, okay? It's closer to 60% than it is 50%, especially when you take the rock zone into account as well. Try and run through the rock zone as much as you can. Try and keep your runs consistent. Those two things will make a really big difference. And then thinking about your pacing as well overall can make those easier, which is why I've spoke about things like ego, not going too hard at the start, knowing when to push and when to not, okay? If it's your first Hyrox, you're not going to nail it. As I've said, you might not nail it on your first one, you might not nail it on your second or third or fourth, I think I've done singles, doubles combined, I've done 9 or 10 now. I think I've nailed it twice. So, you know, you're not always going to get it right, but you can use it to learn from the next one. Never try and make the same mistake twice, like me, basically. So make sure you pay attention to your running. If, as I've said earlier in the video, if you do want some more help regarding Hyrox, there's 30 ways in 30 days you can get better at Hyrox. QR code's right here. If not, no pressure at all. This isn't the first Hyrox video I've made. I've actually made quite a few by now. So if you did like it, you might want to watch this one as well. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.